This is Ovid's Metamorphoses Lectio Prima. We're starting off with line 451. Primus amor be Daphne penne equim non force ignara didit sed siwa cupidinis ira. And we'll start off here. And basically, you're kind of looking for some verbs to ground your sentences. The first verb that we get to is here, dated. He, she, or it gave. And now we're going to look kind of, it's this first line, primus morphoi be Daphne penneia, as one kind of chunk. Okay, so in Latin, when Ovid wrote and other authentic Latin authors from antiquity wrote, they didn't use punctuation. So whenever you see things that are like capitalized or like commas or periods or colons or whatever, those things were added by editors later. And so use punctuation is what I'm saying. Use it as a hint as to like where to divide up the sections of sentences to be able to translate. So here we're going to kind of look at this, even though there's not a verb in this section, we're just going to try to figure out what the heck is going on. Primus amor. I look up the word amor and it's masculine. So primus, sorry, I realized my camera is shaking. Primus amor go together, the first love. And I'm going to look up Daphne and Penneia. These are also nominative. Penneia is feminine. Daphne is also feminine, except it is a Greek name. So the Greek endings and the Greek forms are similar to Latin in the sense that the endings will be masculine, feminine, or neuter, and they'll be in different cases, nominative, dative, etc. But basically what that means for us is that when it's transliterated into Latin, it's like the endings do not match the Latin endings because they're actually Greek endings, if that makes sense. So whenever you read Latin, if you have your green book or other commentaries, you can look and it'll give you a note saying that Daphne is actually Greek and it's feminine and nominative here. And then phoebe, this is the only thing in this line or this segment that is not nominative. Phoebe is genitive. So phoebus is, of course, the god Apollo. We know that it is masculine because in the second group, this I is masculine. It's Apollo. If it had been phoeba or something with a feminine ending, then we know that it would have been Apollo's sister, who is Diana. But here, Apollo. So the first love of Apollo, and we're going to supply a is or a was or is Daphne Penneia, is Daphne. And what Daphne? She's the Penean Daphne. She came from this certain river called Peneus. Peneus is the name of a river. It makes sense because Daphne is a river nymph. Also, Peneus is her father's name. Her father is the river itself. So it would be like saying like the Lexingtonian magistra, you know, the magistra from Lexington. It's just another adjective that describes who she is. So primus amor, amor is masculine. The first love of Apollo is or was Peneian Daphne. And there's a rhetorical device here. I know I'm like talking a lot about this first little section. There's a rhetorical device that I'm going to mention just because it comes up so often in this reading, and the device is called an ellipsis, ELLIPSIS, and this just means omission. And so here in this line or in this section, the thing that's missing is the verb or is an est. And this just means like the reader can still understand what's going on in the sentence, even though that verb is missing, or even though that, crucial word is missing, we still know what's going on. That's just called an ellipsis. And maybe what's the point of an ellipsis? Well, a lot of different things. Maybe it's, it feels more rushed, like maybe it's more real time, like the author is excited to tell you the story, or something like that. Lots of different reasons that someone might use an ellipsis. And a lot of that's conjecture. Like you can kind of come up with your own reason. What you think, the fact that this little section doesn't have a verb, what you think the author is trying to do with that, like why you think the author decided to use an ellipsis, why you think that the author decided to leave out that word. Okay, we're gonna move on. Quem non forsignare dadet. Okay, fors. Now this next little section that we're looking at, quem non forsignare dadet, we're gonna stop here because the next word is sed, and this is a verb. A verb does not always come at the end of the sentence, but oftentimes it does. And instead of using the word sentence, I'm going to start using the word clause. That just means a segment of a sentence. A clause is it's kind of like a sentence within a sentence. So this little clause, this little segment, forsignare dadet. I'm going to look up this word fors. It is nominative. So I'm going to say this word means chance. So I'm going to underline it one time for nominative. And it's feminine. So that makes me think that this feminine word right next to it is going to go together with it. Ignorant chance. Gave. Quem non. Gave quem. And this is masculine. It's a QU word. That QU shows me that it's a question word. So it's going to be like a whom, who, or whom type of word. And since this section doesn't really end with a question mark, it's just like part of a sentence. It's going to like start off this clause. Whom ignorant chance did not give. So remember the known here is just not, it negates the whole thing. And ignorant chance did not give. And what's understood is ignorant chance isn't what gave Apollo his first love. It was something else that gave Apollo his first love. Something else made Apollo fall in love. And said Siwa Cupidinus era, but, so it wasn't ignorant chance, but it was Siwa era. I look up era and Siwa. Era is nominative. Siwa, feminine, goes with era. But the savage but the fierce anger, Cupidinus of Cupid. So a lot of times when people fall in love, it's by ignorant chance. It's just by chance. It's blind chance. However, in this story, the very beginning of the story, we're seeing that it's not blind chance that gives Apollo his first love, but it is the anger of Cupid. So now we have two different gods. We have Phoebus Apollo, and we have Cupid, the love god. Apollo is like the big, strong, older half brother. He fights monsters. He is handsome. He's god of the sun, god of prophecy, god of healing, god of music. He has everything, right? All this power. And then there's Cupid, the younger brother. And maybe, just maybe, the things that Cupid has, we'll have to see how the story progresses. But it's kind of starting out about this rivalry between these two brothers, because we realize, like right from the get-go, that the anger of Cupid is the thing that incites Apollo's first love. And now we're going to continue to kind of chunk this up, and I see some quotation marks down here, so I'm going to kind of treat these next two lines together. Delius hunc nuper. So Delius and Phoebus are both adjectives, both epithets of Apollo. So Apollo, Delius, Apollo. And this is an adjective of a place. Delius is, Delos is the island in the Cyclades in Greece, where Apollo and his twin sister, Diana, were born. And that's a fun mythology story, or I don't know, maybe sad mythology story. Know if you're familiar with it. So recently, Apollo, hunc, so this is accusative. We don't know, it's going to be a th word, like a this or a that, or those type of thing. We don't know what this means yet, so we're going to leave it for now and come back to it. Victa serpenti superbus. Superbus is nominative, the US. So Delius or Apollo was superbus, he was proud. And here's the reason he was proud. Victa serpente, with the serpent having been conquered. These two endings are ablative. You don't necessarily know that victa is ablative, but it's not nominative because you already have something doing the nominative job. So it's likely that it's not nominative. And victa, if you want to make sure you can scan the whole line. So, and that would look like de lius hunc nu per victa serpente superbus. And you look at the lines, and victa is long, so that A is long. That tells you that it has to be ablative, with the serpent having been conquered. So he was proud. So Delius was arrogant, with the serpent having been conquered. He was arrogant because the serpent was conquered. He was arrogant because he was the one who conquered the serpent. Viderat, he had seen, this is Apollo. Apollo had seen flectentem. So now I'm going to double underline a bunch of my accusatives because I have a lot of accusatives in this little section. Flectentem, and this means, what does this mean? Bending or stretching. And this refers, should I tell you? This refers to Cupid. Cupid is bending or stretching. The thing that Cupid is bending or stretching is his bow. He's stretching back this string of his bow. So he's stretching back the cornua. So the NSNT right here that you see equals ing, that's the ing stretching. Apollo had seen Cupid stretching his cornua, his bow, adducto nervo, with a string having been led back, or having been like pulled back. Flectentem, if you didn't know this was Cupid, when I first read this, I did not know it was Cupid. So you can just say the stretching person or the stretching thing. Once you read the line, you're like, oh, it's stretching the bow with a cord, like with the string having been pulled back. So it's probably a person that's stretching this cord. So you could say like he had seen the stretching person, or the person who was stretching the bow with the pulled back string. And because you and I know the story, also the person with the bow in this story, that's not Apollo, is Cupid himself. Quidque tibi lasci puer cum fortibus armis dixerat, he had said. Que here, this is like an enclitic. Whenever you add a que, sorry, I know that the camera's shaking. Whenever you add a que on the end of a word, it means and. Here it's just by itself, and I think it means and just by itself. So now let's look into the quotes. What to you, lascive puer, and this is vocative here. You mischievous boy. What to you, or what for you, you mischievous boy, cum fortibus armis, with, and with takes ablative, fortibus armis, with weapons that are strong, with strong weapons. And that there's also an ellipsis in this line, line 456. Let's see. 456, what we're missing is facet, or I guess facus, because he's talking to Cupid. Like, what are you doing with these heavy weapons? What are you doing with these strong weapons? And the weapon that Apollo is talking about is the bow and arrow. So remember, Apollo is the god of archery also, and Cupid also has this like archer's bow and arrow. And so Apollo, older brother, is saying, what are you, like, who do you think you are, right? Like, what are you, what is it to you, lascive puer, to play with these strong weapons, he said. Ista decen numeros gestamina nostros. Okay, so this little, and then qui is another question word. So we're going to separate the sentence off here and just look at this little section. Decant, they are fitting, maybe, or they are decent for, or they are fitting, or they are apt. And ista here, this is nominative, and this a means that it is neuter plural. Ista decant, so they and gestamina are going to go together. So like those weapons, gestamina doesn't necessarily mean weapon. It can mean clothes. It can be weapons that you carry around. It's anything that you can carry. Like a purse would be a gestamina, like something that you carry or wear or bear. But here it means weapons. So these weapons, decant, are fitting, humeros nostros, for our shoulders or on our shoulders, or they ought to be on our shoulders. Humeros nostros, and that's just accusative plural. Oh, yeah, I should tell you, in poetry also, a lot of times speakers will use the royal we when it's like, well, we woke up this morning and we got our coffee and then we drove to school. Okay, it wasn't we who got up. It wasn't we who got our coffee. It wasn't we who drove to school. It was just I, right? Like I'm just one lady. Same thing here. He's saying like a lot of times the singulars will be plurals, the plurals will be singulars when it's talking about a specific person. So these weapons ought to, or are apt for humeros nostros, our shoulders, when he really means like my shoulders. But it's a way of like lifting himself up and making himself feel more important, you know. And let's keep going. Qui dare certa ferae. All right, now we have a lot of verbs. So I'm going to go ahead and box the verbs to see if we can like kind of get a grasp on how this sentence is working or how this section of the story is working. As you see, the sentences are like forever freaking long, like never ending. This whole first page is just 3 sentences. It looks like. Possumus, we are able, and the we again here is just Apollo. I am able, but we are able. And now I have a lot of infinitives. An infinitive, second principal part, with a we are able, I'm expecting, I'm able to do something, to have something. So I'm going to box all the infinitives. Also, we are able to give. Oh, I guess that's it. Yeah. Okay. So we are able to give, or we, and then the QU word again is just a who. We who are able to give certa ferae, and certa is accusative plural. This is neuter. And remember that neuter words with an A ending are going to be plural. It can be nominative plural or accusative plural. If you look on your purple declension sheet on the back, it'll have like the gray shaded in areas because the gray areas are the ones that like repeat are the same. So the A ending neuter plural is like super, super common. The reason I know it's not nominative is because we is already nominative. We are able to give certain wounds, certa vulnera. So these 2 words go together. Remember, case, number, and gender match. In this case, it's really easy because A and A look exactly the same. So we can guess or know that these 2 words go together. We are able to give certain wounds or sure wounds. Ferae, and this is dative. to a beast, we who are able to give certain wounds to the enemy. Dative meaning 2 or 4. To a beast, to a certain enemy. Now, I'm not sure if he's talking about, I think actually he's talking about the same beast, enemy, hostile monster type of thing that we're getting ready to meet, named the Python. I don't want to ruin anything for you, but spoiler alert, it's Python. It's a terrible beast, serpentine beast that we're about to meet. Okay. So I would also say these 2 words go together. We are able to give certain wounds to a wild beast. We are able to give certain wounds to this enemy. And you have dare here is repeating. This word repeats, and it's repeating just for emphasis. Like he's emphasizing, because all the other words are just used kind of one time, right? But dare is repeated. So we who are able to give certain wounds, it's like it emphasizes giving the wounds. It emphasizes that Apollo is like superior, killer, like attacks the enemy, can defeat terrible, wild, feral beasts, things like that. We who Strawimus killed, or I think if you look this up, it says like scatter. It's kind of like saying laid someone down, or like laid them flat, meaning like you knocked them out, you killed them, they're totally lying down, kind of Strawimus. Like we scattered, or we killed. We who killed, let's see, Puthona, this is another Greek word. So this is, if you look up the commentary, I'll actually tell you that it is accusative, the Python. And let me tell you about this Python. I'm going to go ahead and tell you that he is Tumidum, swollen. This Python swollen, or the swollen Python. Python is like terrible monster that's like a serpentine type of monster that takes up lots and lots of, like it's like acres long or acres large, right? He is swollen, innumeris sagitis, with innumerable arrows. And the person who filled the Python with innumerable arrows was Apollo himself, right? Because Apollo is the one who killed him, who gave certain wounds to the feral enemy. Okay, as you see, I kind of left this whole section untouched. Okay, so let's go back and tackle this. We who Moto just now, recently, like he just now killed this monster, just now came back, killed Python. And let me tell you more about Python. Python was prementum. He was pressing. So if you see the NSNT here, the NT kind of snuggled in the middle of the word, NSNT equals ING. So it means like pressing. And he was pressing tot eugera, so many eugera. This is also accusative. He was pressing, this word I'm going to say is acres or fields. How do you spell acre? I don't even know. ACRE maybe? Acres or fields. Basically it means like large area. He was pressing huge, like so many fields or so many acres, pestifero ventre, with his pestilent stomach, or with his like pestifero. Actually, this word breaks down meaning like pesti, as in like disease or pestilence. Pharaoh, is where is like the carry or bear, like a ferry carries you across the river, right? So it is a disease carrying. It's just an adjective that means disease carrying. So I'm going to translate this as like pestilential or I could even translate it, I think, as destructive, is what comes up when you look it up. So yeah, in Latin, I know this is really, really hard for you guys that are just now starting. It's definitely still hard for me too. But Latin, a cool thing about Latin, and it makes it really hard to keep up with for us with our like linear thinking, is that it can branch off and describe, it can take one thing and describe, it can describe one aspect very detail, like with very much detail, and then go back to the main kind of point all within the same sentence because the grammar is so flexible and so specific. Okay, we who are able to give certain wounds to the beast, to the hostile beast. We who killed the python pressing on so many fields with his destructive stomach, with his pestilential stomach, swollen python, the same python, swollen innumeri segitis, with innumerable weapons, with innumerable, like, what's the word? Arrows. So you're describing Python as like this terrible hostile enemy, and then you're describing him as he's huge, and not only is he huge, but he's like disease ridden, and then you're describing the same Python as dead because he is swollen with so many of Apollo's arrows. Now remember, the person who's speaking here is Apollo, so I'm going to do Apollo is speaking. And he's very, very proud, right? He's like bragging on himself. He actually has curly hair in poetry. He's like, what do you think you're doing with with your little like bow and arrow, oh little baby brother? Look at what I did with my big bow and arrow. 2, and now we're going back to like deriding or belittling his brother. Let's see. 2, esto is your main verb. B, esto, it doesn't look like a verb. This is an imperative. It means like close the door, turn on the light, take out the trash, like sharpen your pencil, line up at the door, sit down, like all these orders. It's one of those order words. It doesn't actually look like it though. This is actually a like kind of this like antique form, this antiquated form. Anyway, I don't know. It just means be. Like be good. Like if I leave the classroom and a sub comes in, I'm like, be good, guys. I would use this form. So esto just means be. You be content. So he's talking to his brother, Cupid. Be content. US, masculine nominative. Be content. And now we're gonna go to an infinitive. To excite. Amores, accusative plural. Be content to excite the loves or the passions. And now I'm going to stick in there nescio quos. So amores, accusative plural. Quos looks accusative plural. It's a QU. It's a question mark. It's a question word, but it doesn't like end with a question mark. So it just means like who or what or which. You be content to excite your loves. Nescio quos. Now I'm going to like kind of section this off. I don't know what, or I don't know which. It's kind of like saying he's belittling, like Apollo's belittling Cupid. He's saying, oh, you just be happy to go off and excite your little loves. But instead of saying you're a little, like diminutive, like belittling him, instead of saying go excite your little passions, he's saying, go excite your passions. I don't know what passions. You know what I mean? He's like, I don't even know what to call it. Like, it's so insignificant. It's so little. It's so minute. Whatever you do with your bow and arrow, I don't know what, just your little passions. Be content with those passions of yours. Nescio quos, I don't know which passions. And then we have tua is ablative. The only reason that you would know that necessarily is by deduction, because the only other word in this section we didn't translate is also ablative, but also you could scan this line and find that tua is long. Tua face. Face here is fax, facus, and it means torch. It means flame. It means, metaphorically speaking, it means desire. With your torch. You, Cupid, be content to excite your I don't know what passions with your torch. Nick, and don't adsere, and don't assert or claim laudes nostras, our praises. And nostras, again, doesn't mean our, it means my. And he's referring back to himself, Apollo. Yeah, you know what, little brother, go do whatever you do with your little arrow, your little Cupid love arrows. That those are like little and cute and adorable or whatever, but like, just don't go off claiming to be a big, powerful hero who actually fights terrible monsters and actually kills the enemy with his arrows. Like, you can do whatever you want with your little love passions, but don't go trying to assert or trying to claim my praises. And that's where Apollo's line stops. And I promise, guys, I know that this is really long, but my next videos are going to be shorter than this. And I know that because I've already recorded some of them and they're way shorter. Okay, focus. Filius huic veneris, the Filius, the sun, huic veneris. Okay, now I'm kind of confused because huic is dative and veneris is genitive. The sun to this of Venus. Oh, huic. To him. The son of Venus, so Venus, Veneris, this is genitive, singular. The son of Venus, ait said or says, huic, to him. That means like, that is to Apollo. And this is how he responds. So now Cupid, your boy Cupid, he's not going to say much, but what he says is going to really kind of hit home. I don't know. So let's see what he responds. God of love and has a bow. I don't know. That's Cupid. Promise. Okay. Here's what he says. Figat tuus omnia fuebe te meus arcus. All right. So this little section, I'm going to use the punctuation to show me, to like help me section this off. And there are some words that are used 2 times. Whereas we would just repeat the word. Latin is flexible enough not to have to repeat it. And this, again, is a place where there's ellipsis because it's like omission of the repeating of these words. Figat tuus omnia fuebe te meus arcus. Okay, figat is your verb. Transfix or pierce. Now let's see what pierces. Fuebe, this is Apollo. Oh, Apollo. Oh, brother. He's like addressing his brother. So remember, Cupid speaking. Cupid says, oh, Apollo. Tuus, nominative. What else in the sentence is nominative? Arcus. Your arc or your bow, figat, may pierce. And then omnia, this is accusative plural. This is neuter, so this a means plural. It could be either nominative or accusative. It's accusative here because we already have something doing the nominative job. Your arrow pierces everything, phoebus. And now we're going to go to the next section, te meus arcus, and we're going to repeat some of these things. But meus, also nominative, my arcus, arrow, figat, pierces. And then the only other thing that is accusative that we have not translated, te, you. Dang, right? So Cupid says, Apollo, your arrow pierces everything. My arrow pierces you. So now we get the hint of what's going to happen, that Cupid is going to pierce Apollo with his arrow, and Apollo isn't going to die like some terrible enemy. Apollo is going to burn with passionate love and realize that maybe he's not so superior to Cupid and his power after all. Not to ruin the story, but Ovid ruins the whole story for you. It's like foreshadow. It's like, let me tell you the story I'm about to tell you. And remember also the audiences that were listening to this, because it wasn't like primarily written, you're primarily like speaking it and singing it with a lyre as you're like walking around and performing. But the audience knew the story, right? It would be like me telling you all of the story of the boy who cried wolf. Most of you all know that story. Or Mary Had a Little Lamb would probably even be better because it's like set to a rhythm and metrical pattern. The people know what to expect. It's not like actually spoiling it. Quanto que animalia cadent cuncta Deo, tanto minor est tu gloria nostra. Quanto, tanto, these two words rhyme. So first of all, que here, I know that you've heard me say this before, but que, it's an enclitic. It just means it's stuck here at the end of the word, and it means and. So you're going to stick an and at the beginning of the word that que is connected to. And quanto, tanto. Now these two things rhyme and they actually go together. As much as. It's like an amount, like a quantity. However much blah, blah, blah happens, it is as much as blah, blah, blah happens. And I'll translate it and hopefully it'll make more sense. Cadunt, they submit or yield or fall. And I'm going to make animalia and cuncta the they here. So cadunt is plural, they yield or they submit. Animalia cuncta, all animals submit. Deo, and this is dative, to the god. And what god do all animals submit to? Well, to Apollo. Remember, Apollo can like kill all the animals and all the monsters. All animals submit to the god Apollo. And now we figure out how to do quanto. By however much or as much as all animals yield to Apollo, tanto, it is that much as. Now let's see what this little section is doing. Minor est tua gloria nostra. Est minor and tua gloria. These are the nominatives of this clause of this little section. Your glory is less. Nostra, ablative, than ours. Okay, so remember you have the OR, like the comparative, meaning like ER, like more, whatever. Minor just means less, like more bad or more less than ours. And the ours here, Cupid is referring to himself, than mine. than my glory. Your glory is less than my glory. By however much the animals all animals yield to you, Apollo, it is as much as your glory is less than my glory, is less than mine. And there are a lot of A here, and you're like, wait a minute, which ones are nominative and which ones are ablative? That would be a perfect opportunity to scan the line and make sure that these two are short, which they are. And that will help you to figure out the function of those words. Cuncta deo tanto minor est tu gloria nostra. Cuncta deo tanto minor est tua. There we go. Minor. Est. Cuncta deo tanto minor est tua gloria nostra. There we go. And that'll give you the hint that these two are short and doing the nominative job in that sentence. And thanks, guys.